so I'm going to resume recording. Okay, excellent. All right, well, welcome to the August 11th meeting of the Green Community. Let me just get up the agenda things. I got to do the. Where is my agenda now? Boy, oh boy, did I lose that already? Agenda. Come on. Maybe I didn't open it yet. No, here we go. I opened it. Okay, so welcome to the meeting. This meeting's being recorded for future reference. It's going to be available on the YouTube page. Things that are going to be talked about, the agenda list of topics which may be discussed at the meeting and those reasonably anticipated by the chair. Votes may be taken as a result of these discussions. Not all items listed may in fact be discussed. And other items not listed may also be brought up for discussion to extend permitted by open meeting. Okay, so at 7:03, call to order. And I'm actually going to amend the agenda a little bit because I'd like to introduce our newest member. Chris, if you want to say hello and mention yourself, and then we'll go around and just kind of say hello.
Hi, everybody. My name is Chris Holden. I live at 25 Upland Ave in Lunenburg. And let me see, I was persuaded to join this by my wife back at one of the town meetings when they were passing out flyers. She said, hey, you should look into that. And so I dropped my name and here I am.
Okay.
I've been doing building construction and energy work for pretty much my whole life. A couple little detours, but still back in energy work these days. I work for community teamwork in Lowell right now. We do low income energy retrofits for people.
Cool. Excellent.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, welcome to the team. Okay. All right. So I'm Dave Blatt. I am basically the chair because I figured this, but I've been on the committee since it started. I actually started as an alternate and I've been on it ever since. I'm just more on I do some light construction. My background's as an electrical engineer, involved in energy efficiency measures with other companies and buildings, and just want to help the town more than anything else.
Matt Snyder. I live at 985 Flat Hill Road. Recent addition to the committee last year. Similar circumstances. Heard them talking about it at a town meeting.
Oh yeah,
I was feeling like I should do something to get engaged. I've worked for a construction firm since I've been out of college, but not necessarily energy specific. But it's always been an interest of mine to figure out ways to pursue renewable energy and do better for the community. So this felt like a good fit.
very nice.
Dave Passios.
Never heard of you.
I'll bet. Elected boards over the years, Board of Health and Parks Commission, appointed boards, Finance Committee, and representatives from the Finance Committee to Capital Planning. Green Communities, I think a year and a half ago I've joined, but I've been coming to meetings for probably 8 years.
Oh wow.
He was one of our only visitors.
Yeah, and it's always been my goal to see the streetlights through before I back away from town government. I'm officially at the moment off the Finance Committee, but I'm still representing them as their designee to capital planning.
Yeah.
So I've still got a few seats that I'm sitting on.
Yeah, okay. I heard you announce your retirement from one of them just at a recent meeting.
Yeah, that was Finance Committee, but then they have some changes coming in the fall, and they've decided that it was in everybody's best interest for the time being that I stay as the representative to capital planning.
Okay.
So,
you just couldn't leave. They're just like, no, we're not going to let you leave.
well, yes and no. I mean, there were feelings both ways, but with the transition that's going to be happening in September, forced partially by Peter Beardmore jumping to school committee and committing to resigning from the Finance Committee by the end of September, then there's some issues with the Finance Committee going into budget season down 2 people.
Yeah.
So
Well, that was good of you to stay on.
Yeah.
This is one of those retire and become a consultant moves, right?
Yeah, well, they knew they weren't done with me anyway. I've been showing up for meetings. I've been showing up,
Volunteer.
haven't shown up for meetings for boards I I've never sat on for 10 years.
Yeah.
You know, planning board used to think, oh God, here comes Dave. What's he up to now? And I'd sit there through a 3.5-hour meeting, not say a word and walk out the door.
Yeah.
Just because I wanted to know what was going on.
I understand.
Anyway, I won't hold this proceeding up because I'm really excited about the streetlights.
You got it.
I'm Liz Murphy. I live at Rolling Acres Road.
Mhm.
I work for the city of Fitchburg in community development and housing development.
Oh, okay.
So that's my very short, and I've been on the board for, I don't know. how
A
many
while.
years,
Yeah.
5-ish years or so, and, yeah, that's my story.
Cool. Very good. Nice to meet all of you.
Okay, excellent. All right. So, did anybody ever, did others have a chance to look at the minutes from the last meeting?
Yep.
Okay, any issues?
Sorry about the last minuteness
All right.
of it all.
No, hey, they, obviously your emails got read, so, yeah.
It's exactly as I remember it since I wasn't.
Yes, that you were there. So one thing I was actually thinking about with those minutes is, would it make sense to actually attach the application that we submitted to the minutes when it goes to the keeper of minutes? Since the bulk of the meeting was really focused on filling out the application.
Probably, yeah.
So I could ask her.
Okay. All right, actually, I could probably send that to you if I got it somewhere.
Send me a copy of that.
The minutes?
Minutes.
Was it or- and-
No, actually, I
and
don't
or
think
was it
that I
something on-
knew
for
Well,
a reason?
you can't approve them because you weren't
Okay.
here.
So,
So,
yeah.
that's fine.
but I didn't include you in. the-
All
I
right.
didn't
No, I was
know.
just, I just
Okay.
didn't want to have missed something.
Yeah.
Sorry.
All right. So I'm okay if I'll take a motion if you want to approve them pending the attachment.
If somebody can remind me of the date, I move that we approve the minutes of
Okay.
414, I think it was.
414,
Yeah.
yeah.
414 as submitted with the attachment of the application.
Okay. I'll second. Am I allowed to do that? Yeah. Okay, all in favor?
Your chair, you're allowed to do anything you want.
Okay. All right. Oh, you okay? Everybody? okay?
Yes.
Yeah, all right. You unanimous. Okay, all right. Okay, so that's good there. All right, so just a quickie here, where am I here? Green. Okay, so we got approved for 187,140. Out of that, 5,000 was for another hybrid plug-in police cruiser. So we were able to give the town 5,000 of the 62,000 that it's going to cost them for a new cruiser. And then we have 10,000 for administrative costs. So on the administrative cost, I'd like us to think about what we'd like to do. I know we've used Karen in the past. It's a matter of, I like Karen a lot. However, I find she's more reactive than proactive. And if I could, I'd like to see if there's something proactive,
Yeah.
in this thing, because I think as a small group who aren't involved in state government, I need somebody who's kind of pushing a little bit, saying, have you seen this? Have you seen that type of thing? And I'm open to thoughts.
Where do you think we'll find that?
I don't know. I was gonna ask Kelly.
Yeah.
Just to see.
Because I have had a couple conversations with Karen on a number of issues.
Okay. And if you feel comfortable,
Outside
please.
of Green, some of it
Yeah.
outside of Green Community.
Okay.
She's helped me a lot with some sourcing of possibilities for grant money for parks and things like that. So, I have, every time I call her, I said, have we missed another date yet?
Okay, yeah. So I'm open. It's just maybe, and possibly it's just, I'll take the responsibility of, I really haven't asked to really kind of do anything.
Right.
It's just kind of been whatever it has been. And we had the crutch for a lot of years with John Londa, because John would just take on and just, he wrote the grants, he wrote this, he did the reports, he did a little of everything. I do believe we need somebody to do the report, with the reports, with this stuff. And if we feel comfortable, I don't have a problem using her for that, but it would definitely be us like giving more of a agenda, I think, for, you know,
Yeah,
what,
and I think being in touch with her more often.
yes,
too,
Yeah.
because it generates her thought process if one of us talks to her,
Right.
so.
But I appreciate your thinking along this lines, because and this is no reflection of Karen, but I think MRPC as an organization is a little bit more reactive than proactive in general. You know, and if there was an opportunity to find somebody that could be a little more dedicated to this, I mean, $10,000 isn't a lot of work. I mean, isn't a lot of money, but hopefully it's not a ton of work to just keep up with the reports and kind of manage some of the process.
right,
The only other comment I have is my attempts to communicate with MAPC were totally fruitless. 100%.
yes, I understand. By the way, I can't agree with you more. They did talk to me about, at one time, maybe 2 years ago, when I first approached them, they talked to me about the idea of hiring them, you know, that they could be paid consultants now, because they don't really have any state funding to do what they used to do. So now it's more of, okay, do we want to pay them to be our consultant? And I'm like, I'm not sure what that was buying me you know, buying us in the long run.
Yeah, if they had more expertise than MRPC planners have, then I could see the value there, but they're an awful long ways away,
Yes,
being
yes,
in Boston.
yes, exactly. And that really, and they're really not concentrating on this area, I don't think at all.
Dave, can I interrupt for a second? Could you check? the,
Yep, I'm with you. Just did,
Okay, that's fine.
it just popped up.
Yep.
So, okay.
I'm not exactly sure why I want to be on this.
In progress.
I gotta shut up right now. Hang on.
That's good.
If that's not enough, I'm gonna shut everything.
No problem, no problem. Okay, so that was just my thoughts on just that, and I do believe we need to like look at that right now. I was very happy we had a couple of, you know, took the responsibility grant.
I'm gonna click out.
Okay,
There you go, you're awesome.
okay. I'm not really gonna share, you know, we'll share if we have to. Okay,
Yeah, and I don't think there's anything we need. I'm gonna bring the other document up later.
exactly. Okay, all right. So let me look then. What do we have next? What do we have here? Okay, so now, go
Sorry,
ahead.
just to finish that thought, the balance of the grant funds that we received go to the streetlight conversion.
Correct. Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on, I'll give you that number. 172, 140. Now, that was designed, what Heather did, what we did, voted on back in April was that the 172 consisted of both a design phase and a build phase. It's a map, there was discussion, you know, and that's now what I would like to start trying to have the discussion of whether we feel it's necessary for the 2 phases, or is it something that we think would makes more sense just to have it done as 1 phase at this point. My personal thoughts is that we could write an RFP, which kind of does the design with like kind of doing a design build type of thing. The idea of installing a couple, you know, 3 lights, having to install 3 lights so that there is a period where people can look at the lights and we can decide which light we like the best and things of that sort. And I'm not sure how much, I still question how much the designer was doing for us at the $37,000 that they wanted.
No, we had talked about like all the last meeting is very fresh in my mind.
Oh,
Just the
okay.
minutes.
Yeah.
But we had talked a lot about doing a turnkey
Yes,
RFP and then reaching out to Duxbury.
we were gonna reach out a couple different
Yeah,
communities,
and
yes.
Rockport and another one, and I was gonna take Rockport and I didn't.
And I tried, I tried for,
I've read Williamstown. I got a tiny bit of information.
yeah, and
I did reach out to my aunt and uncle, and they don't have any information themselves, but she did say she would try to look. dig
So
into
they
it
have
for
a
me, so-
new administrator or manager, so
Right, so they
he
were.
wasn't familiar with the original install.
Yep.
'Cause that RFP that we saw at the last meeting on the list, that was actually for the upgrade for the electronic monitoring.
Okay,
That was stage 2, and they also took that out of available funds. They did not go to Green Community.
right, yeah,
So I did try to reach out to Duxbury. They were still going through the audit process. They were looking at it as, I think they were looking at it as like $60 a light. But I didn't really have a good feel for what they were doing. I reached out to the woman that was in charge and we played phone tag a couple of times and then it kind of fell off a little bit.
Were they able to give us a copy of their RFP?
That I didn't even get to that point because I was talking to the DPW person who referred me to the person who was supposed to be in charge, and I just didn't get much further than that. Life took over
Yes,
a little.
I completely understand.
Yeah, but yes, yeah. So they were doing. They were looking at, like I say, going through that whole idea, the audit right now. So they hadn't had the installation just yet.
Do we have an inventory of these?
So we have an inventory of all the lights. We don't have an we have an inventory of the lights.
Existing in operation at this time?
Excuse me?
They're all existing and in operation.
They're all existing.
About 30% non-operational.
Okay,
Like lights burnt out, not necessarily that.
and
Right,
essentially
so-
it's the maintenance has seemingly stopped by Unitil since we brought up purchasing. them.
Yeah.
Correct.
so who owns these lights? Is it
So
the
we are,
town?
so in order to do the streetlight conversion, we have to own. So we are in the process of finishing the purchase. So we've agreed on a number. And now it's a matter of doing the purchase. So the month,
Did they sign this past Tuesday? I need to go back to that. Because they had it on the agenda to sign and then it was put off 1 week and it was on the agenda for this past Tuesday, but I haven't found it in the meeting yet.
okay, and I don't know if they officially signed. I think they were still waiting for, I spoke to Heather actually earlier in the week and she said she was still waiting for something from Unitil.
Yeah.
As usual.
As usual.
Right, so the number is not supposed to change. What a
How
surprise.
many are there in total?
300,
300 change.
yeah, 336, I'm trying to say 336 or 363, 336.
Yeah, it's really disturbing is if you look back to on this link that you gave us,
Yes,
all of the services that were available about 8 years ago when we started this process
yes,
and purchasing in bulk. and
Yes.
All this other stuff, we lost all of that. by
yeah, we lost a lot.
It being dragged out by various entities.
Yes.
Anyway,
Is Unitil a possible supplier of these? Can we get one flat rate? for replacement?
They're flat, they did give us a rate, but the problem being is that if they replace it, they want to own.
They still own it.
And the issue is that we found is that 60% of our bill went to maintenance.
Oh my God.
Exactly. That's what got us the most, to really push this thing of changing of getting away from Unitil. The idea, talking to most towns, they saying that if they change 10% a year, that's a lot.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
that's
LED's got an amazing track record.
exactly, it's the first year, you'll find a few that are faulty.
Right.
And then after that, you sit back and relax for a while.
Yeah.
And
it'd be interesting because I think part of the proposal that we put out next will include a present condition review.
correct,
And I think we need to be sure that we're going to get information as to, I don't know how to word this, but I'd go around town and I hope I don't drive off the road one of these days, but I'm looking up at streetlights. all the time.
yes, yeah,
And, you know, we've talked about replacing the entire unit back to the pole or just the heads. And I've noticed, and I can't give you a number one way or the other, but the metal pipe and bracket from the pole to the head varies depending on the vintage of the light.
You mean the
Oh.
style of it?
or no, the length,
The actual
the diameter.
diameter of the rod coming out, which would mean we'd have to have, if we're doing just the heads, we'd have to have multiples or
Yes.
adapters or whatever. Whereas I'm still an advocate for going right all the way back to the pole with all of
That's probably gonna add a significant cost. Those brackets are probably quite expensive.
Actually, you'd be surprised that they were not.
them. Yeah.
Yeah, going online and looking ourselves, they weren't.
And the thing it eliminates,
Wooden poles?
It would be for wooden, it's the same bracket. It's a base standard bracket that you would be for a wooden pole or a metal pole. It's just whether you use exactly.
the issue you run into is depending on how long they've been up there. When you pull the head off, you have to inspect the wires, and if the wires have deteriorated to the point where they're not usable, they gotta yank them all out,
Yeah.
put new wires in, and your labor intensity triples at least. Whereas if you know you're just disconnecting the wires, unbolting it, pulling it off, and slapping up a brand new one, you're connecting the wires and you're done.
Right. I mean, you guys have been through a lot. I'm sure you guys have been exposed to a lot of this. Back in the day, I think part of our original conversation on the phone a couple months ago was that I had actually done lighting work for, through Mass Save and the multifamily program,
Right.
and converted a number of parking lots and, and actual buildings and facilities over as well to LED from their incandescent or high output lighting.
Mhm.
So it's just been an interesting conversation here. Initially, it doesn't sound like the $37,000 is well spent for, the design portion of this. We should just be able to replace these lights, like for like, exactly. If it's a type, they've got different beam
Yes.
patterns on them, you type 1 through 5, generally speaking.
Yes.
So if we can replace them type for type, and get a good brand that's got a, 150,000 hour or 200,000 hour track record. Some of these things are really pushing some long limits on them. I don't see why we just can't have somebody, contractors bid on this.
Right. The biggest thing I felt was, and I guess I would have to talk to the electrical inspector, who's now different than the electrical inspector when we first started talking about this. And that was the idea with the who would inspect to make sure that they would be being done correctly.
Right, the level of oversight.
Right. Right.
There isn't necessarily a person at the town that can manage the project oversight. So that's part of what we're looking for with the design person. But perhaps there's another way to think about.
In fact, if we want to go back really far, there was that gentleman that you had introduced me to.
And I'm still looking for his contact information.
I have to go back in my emails because I definitely have emails from him. And
Andrea from Board of Health had it, but her archives disappeared when they switched over to lunenburgmass.gov.
okay. All right. And let me see if I do have that.
But that guy worked with Fitchburg and a number of other towns, cities and towns when they did their projects. And that's what he did. He oversaw the, it was like an owner's manager type
And
person.
we did have an all-in proposal from, was it Tanko way back when, right?
Correct.
Yeah,
Was a
yeah,
pretty-
sure.
And by the way, we did have the other conversation with him. And that conversation, I think he gave me a number like $400 a light, 400 a light was his, a general number, just throwing out a number at me, which still at 400 a light, 336, we still have plenty of left over.
One comment just before I forget to make
Yeah.
it. The gentleman in Williamstown wasn't able to give me a lot of information, but they were in the process of actually doing the electronic upgrade. And Tanko won the bid, and he said they've been fantastic to work with.
Okay.
So I just want to pass
I mean,
that.
with the electronic upgrade, is that like the Wi-Fi controller type stuff?
Controller,
Yeah.
yep.
Because I was looking at that information, what you sent over again, Dave. I think if nothing else, we need to explore that as an alternate
As an
and
alternate.
decide
I-
then once the prices come in, if we can move forward or not, because it
I-
feels sort of like a no-brainer for the finished product, but.
Yeah. And I've brought it up a number of times and it may be one step too far, but I'd also like to put the alternate in there just to see what the number comes in at for real-time monitoring of power use.
Right.
I mean, it doesn't hurt to ask for a number.
Right.
Because I think the calculation of power use, although very scientific, I don't think it's gonna be accurate.
Right.
And it could cost us the other way too. I mean, based on my solar panel production over the past 2 or 3 years is, it's never, only 1 year has it made its guaranteed production. So I just got a check for $137 in the mail last week, because I have a production guarantee every year.
No.
So I mean, that's kind of a crapshoot. If we have a year where it's really cloudy and dark, then
Right.
the calculated amount might be better than the actual.
Right.
Yeah, I'll look back in my notes and find them.
And that guy really sounded like he knew what he was talking.
I had really good, in fact, he was one of the ones that even helping me with some of the comments that we're making to Unitil.
Right.
Not that we ever got answers to that, how they did the depreciation. It took us, 3 years just to get the sheet that told us when they replaced the lights?
Mhm.
Yeah.
I mean, it was brutal, believe me, it was brutal. It was literally from the day we started asking what the cost was, it went up. And then when they finally gave us each time, and when they finally gave us the list of the lights, and their comment was that they replaced 1/5 of the lights every year because the HIDs only lasted 5 years. So therefore, we never have a burnt out light. And you can see that from the day we asked them, they stopped replacing lights unless they saw that it was burnt out.
Unless they were called by the police department and said, this is a safety issue, this one. has to
Exactly.
get done.
Yes. And so they
We're
literally,
still paying them for
oh
Oh,
yeah,
yeah, we're paying, yeah,
it. Okay.
and we're paying to maintain the entire system. Per fixture.
So any day now, if we want
Yeah.
to close on that sale.
yes.
Yeah, definitely. And, that's the other side of the coin. I mean, there's gonna have to be a maintenance contract. I don't think the town manager's gonna bother with the maintenance contract for the existing equipment. I think, the stance has been nothing gets replaced. Definitely nothing gets replaced until we own them. And then very little will be updated before we do the conversion. Unless it's a safety issue.
Right. Fast track the retrofit, get it done as quickly as we can.
Correct.
I've heard the discussion of trying a few samples. Would they be different versions of same company's lighting or different light patterns or completely different brands?
I'll be looking at,
Or from different contractors even?
so it would be whatever part of this was my thought, was the process was, part of the process is they would find a spot where there's 3 lights fairly close together.
Yeah.
And have them install, whether it's a different color, whether it's a different brand or something, but 3 different options for us, and then deciding from there. Because that's the only thing. It's just a matter of maybe there's one that we like the color better, but you're never gonna know that. And I don't feel like driving from city to city trying to look at the color and remembering which one it was. As well as I felt that was a nice way to tell the townspeople, look, something's happening and this is what you got.
Yeah.
Because I would look at them doing that before they did the whole audit and the purchasing of it.
I could be all wet with this, but I think somewhere along Lancaster Ave where there are fixtures that are non-functional already,
Yes,
might be a good place, and they're far enough apart so you won't get bleed over from one to the other. You'll actually get to see the actual light intensity from each individual fixture as you go down Lancaster Ave, whether it be up here towards the center of town or get down further where there are multiple lights that are not functional, and it's pretty darn dark. I get out at 10 o'clock, come up from that end every night.
Yes.
So.
Yeah.
So draw a map, but not while you're driving.
Yeah,
You need a co-pilot.
Yeah, you might
Yeah.
need a co-pilot
Yeah.
to sort that out.
and the police know where they are because they did an inventory, at least 2/3 of the town. I don't know if they did the whole town.
Is there any particular color temperature that we're leaning towards?
We haven't really thought of it. So there is, I know that site, actually, I had trouble clicking on that site that I had sent the link for, but there are certain lights that they pretty much pick. So it's the state has certain lights that they've kind of standardized on, and that's the color that they believe should be for streetlights. So that's why I was kind of leaning towards it's a brand. But the other side of things is that if, one of the things we don't know is that we have mostly 40-watt bulbs. However, there are some 100s and some 200, or even larger bulbs. And
Mostly 40-watt streetlights?
I'm pretty positive that it's mostly 40s.
Seems awfully low for a
Uh,
lamp like that.
Bear with me a second here. Green group, streetlights.
Smaller end of what I'd be usually replacing is like 100s or 150s, and the average was like a 250.
That's not the one I want. It's this other one. Lunenburg Master Streetlight.
40, 400s and thousands, but
So, sorry, mostly 50s, OL 50s. So mostly 50s, some 100s, some 200s in town, but pretty much 50s. But the thing we don't know is if the ones that are 100 or 200 are just happen to be that's what they were 50 years ago, and they just keep putting the same bulb in type of thing, because I don't have any faith that anything was ever changed over the years.
Yeah.
So, what a 200-watt bulb was in 1960 is probably what a 50-watt bulb is doing, could be doing to.
the HIDs haven't gotten really that much brighter. I don't want to get into, because I'm not an expert on this by any
Understand.
stretch.
Right.
Yeah.
But you put a lamp on a pole 30 feet up, and you're going to need 50 watts of LED up there. So if you've got a 50-watt high pressure sodium bulb up there that's 10 years old and yellow, the equivalent, generally HIDs put out a lot of light. They're nearly as efficient, or they put out nearly as much light as an
yes.
LED will when they're
Yes.
brand new, but they taper off,
Yeah, quickly.
relatively quickly. So a new LED will look brighter up there at the same wattage. I was replacing 250s with a 50-watt on average. So I can't see coming along and putting anything smaller than a 50-watt LED 30 feet up, or 20 or 30 feet up in the air, and having it do a lot for you.
So, as I mentioned, that's what Unitil has. It's pretty much all 50s.
It is, okay.
And then there's actually a 400-watt on Whalum Road. Electric Ave has a 200. So we don't. The part of the inventory is to find out whether what those are. So like Lakefront Road has two 400 watts and a 200 watt on it. But it's a matter of,
There's one in the center of town to be in front of the Ritter Building. It's pointed towards the common. That works about 25% of the time, and I would assume that's a high wattage, because what that was intended for was to flood the common in the center of town.
so on Mass Ave, there's 200, a 100, 200, 200. So, well, then there's a couple, but there's no 200's the biggest on Mass Ave. So it's by the Wayland District was the only ones that had the 400 watts right now.
And I think that was by design to really illuminate the waterfront.
Right. And now, right, so that's the other, that was the only reason that in my thoughts for the designer was, it was kind of giving you that, somebody who could look and say, does this need to be a 100? Does this need to be a 50? And things of that sort.
Right. Yeah, I mean, for a 400, I would have replaced it with something like a 100 LED.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. Does it, depends on the area,
Yeah.
because it could be a different usage, as we see, even the Wayland District. Now it's not used the same way as it was when Wayland Park
Right,
was.
you might just
right.
want street lighting as opposed to any
Ex-
waterfront.
Exactly.
I mean, it sounds like some of these entities, like a Tenco or whoever,
Right,
would have that level of experience to make those recommendations on their own without hiring a separate designer. Right? I mean,
You would seem that way. I mean, they've got people on staff that, have to manage projects like this. So I would imagine that they're pretty expert at it.
Right, they're just their interest, they have their own self-interest in
and
mind.
that's the
That's,
right. That's the check and balance and the right. So
Right.
There's also reputational stuff though, so you sort of, I know that's always the concern is you need somebody watchdogging it, but
Right.
you go do one bad project for one town and everybody hears about it, that's, you know,
Well,
that's people in check too.
Maintain it. What if we require maintenance for 2 years or something like that? You know,
Correct.
that covers a lot right there.
And I would look at that. So do we usually do, I know we discussed this with, at one point. I'm trying to remember. I think it is 2 years that we do the maintenance, we do contracts with third parties as a town. I'm trying to remember if it's 2 or,
In my head.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. 3 might stick in my head.
With an option to renew for a third or something like that.
Yeah, so we could say that's an option. That would probably be an option if we say that part of this bid is to do a 3-year, you know, to include a 3-year maintenance.
And that would go a long way for for the oversight as it's being installed, because, they're not gonna want to be,
You
Correct.
don't want to make problems for yourself.
No.
Right,
But we'd need them to separate
Yes,
the bid for the work and the bid for the maintenance, because we can't pay for any maintenance out of this grant.
correct. Okay, so that's, thank you. That's actually a good thought. Just that way, I think it also helps the town because then we can get a feel for what maintenance means. You know, are we doing 10 a year? Are we doing 30 a year? You know, and because, well, at one point I had spoken to the gentleman who actually does Fitchburg. And his deal was, I'm going back a little bit, but it was $250 to roll the truck. And then every additional light was another $100. So if you figure, if you wait for 4 lights, it's not that bad. It's only looking at $550 to do 4 lights. I don't need them I don't know about every
you
month.
wouldn't call them out for every month.
Exactly. And that kind of thing. And I don't think Unitil is coming out for every light at this point,
No.
or ever has.
And not to we don't need to get into the weeds this far, but you have a pole that gets struck by a vehicle and destroys the pole and destroys the fixture, that's an insurance claim.
Yes,
So,
Yeah.
we shouldn't have to worry about that as part of our maintenance. costs.
Pittsburgh has had those issues, and so we're self-insured,
Who owns the
but,
poles, do you know? Is it Verizon?
then
or
we
is
had
it
to figure out how.
Unitil?
to put the money.
It's usually an entity that owns the pole and then everybody else is on the pole.
Yeah.
right. So the understanding is it's Verizon that owns the pole.
You know what?
AT&T.
Not anymore.
Really?
Who owns them now?
You think Unitil does?
Unitil owns them. And I don't know when that transition happened because I had the same information you had.
Yeah.
But we're also signing I forget what Heather called it, but there's a separate agreement allowing us to put
Our lights.
our
on their
fixtures
poles.
on their poles. It's no cost, but it's a legal agreement.
Right.
Okay.
We just can't get away from
No.
them.
Yeah. But I was shocked when I heard that. And I've been, again, driving around town and stopping and looking at old poles, new poles.
Yes,
And they're all labeled Verizon. I mean,
AT&T.
Unitil.
No.
Oh, Unitil now. Okay,
Just have to tag them when they take ownership.
okay.
and Unitil just put, 40 new poles down Lemonster Road.
I know, I've been trying to
And
get,
I'm hoping those aren't new light fixtures up there because they sure look pretty new.
I need 4 poles and they keep cutting them up on.
Yeah.
I think they don't, he's, oh yeah, we'll talk to you when we take them out.
They're working on Goodrich Street and,
Yes,
what is it, Kilburn or
From-
something
Kill-
now?
yeah,
Okay.
Problem is, they cut them at the telephone wire height and take that section and lay it on the ground, and then the telephone company comes along, moves their wires, and I don't know who pulls the rest of the pole out, but they cut them before they pull them out of the ground.
but that's fine with me. I just need 16
Yeah.
feet.
Yeah.
And so, but what they've done is they chop it up. They take a chainsaw and they chop it into 2-foot sections. And I'm like, guys, I'll put my trailer here.
Hmm.
And,
Are you gonna do like caber tossing or something?
no, yeah. All right, I'm gonna give you too much TMI. I have an
Yeah.
old trampoline. And what I want to do is set up like the 4 poles as the teepee
Yep,
and put chains and have the trampoline. So it just be like a big bed or something like that.
I've
Very
seen
nice.
that.
Yeah,
That's really
But it's gonna be like,
Yeah.
instead of like the little, they have them for like 8 foot, but this is gonna be like a 13-foot one.
Very
You
nice.
know, so, right, but
You'll
find
have
it,
to
find
take a
somebody,
picture of it when you
exactly,
do it.
exactly, so, I know, like I need something else in the yard, right?
You can also, you can hang it from a tree too, if you've got a good branch up there.
Yeah, I know, but I don't have a good branch, it's that type of thing, so,
Getting back to the wattage,
yes,
do we still have the issue of right now, it doesn't really matter if how much electricity the bulb uses, it's not a metered
Correct.
head, so it's like, we're getting charged based on an estimate of something, so.
Based on
So
the
I just wanted to
wattage.
make sure that you understand that none of these poles are metered. So,
We're paying just, yeah.
yeah, so it's like, we can try to save money by dimming things, but it doesn't matter because the
Well,
meter isn't gonna pick that up.
We don't even know how much we're spending on it. We're just paying,
Yeah.
we're just paying a
A
fee.
fee,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
whatever they decide to charge us.
That's what's kind of strange to me is they're adding electronics, although I guess if you're looking to be green, yeah, you're saving power, but you're not saving cost of power because you have no way of monitoring that unless you put in the extra hardware to actually be able to do that.
But so perhaps the fact that we have that 37,000 that we were gonna have for the designer could pay for the electronics,
That's what I would say, that I feel like that's a better use of the funds.
Mhm.
right? I would,
than the Designer.
Yeah.
It's-
well, just in the general fact that you now have a blip that comes on somebody's screen that says, oh, a light went out.
Yeah.
And we have a verification there. You don't have to wait for somebody to drive by and say, or be calling the DPW.
Yeah, and there are additional energy savings to be said with, I think some of the communities in the latest hours actually dim the lights because there's less traffic,
Correct.
right? So you can have additional savings because you're not burning at 75% power, 100% power all night long. You do it in, the whatever period of time as you transition into evening, but from 10 to whatever time in the morning, you actually go to 50% because they said, something I was reading said the human eye can't even discern that change.
I
And you
mean,
recognize additional.
I'm sorry.
No, that's right.
But I still say that if you're not actually metering your electrical use.
Yeah.
That's a warm and fuzzy thing that says you're
Yes,
saving the
yes.
environment, you're not saving money.
Right.
So how do we, so I wonder if Williamstown has a plan, like, are they doing that adding that monitoring system because they think it's gonna save them additional?
Well,
funds?
that, I couldn't get a straight answer because their ROI was what, 2.5 years or 1.5 years for that phase of the project?
I think,
So what were they basing their savings on,
right.
you know?
Mm.
Unless there is an actual metering component in what they're installing, because all they talked about.
Or if they're able to use the calculated figures, right? If we're not metered and it's a calculated figure as to this is how much it costs us for electricity. If you can demonstrate that this is what we're doing with our lights, therefore the calculation says our
So
energy
they
usage
have
is
an
here.
algorithm that brings into consideration the
Perhaps, right.
different periods.
Right, maybe that's how that
I
would
don't
work.
know.
Or like a report that goes to
Right.
Unitil.
Good luck with that.
Is there a significant increase in the cost of these fixtures for this particular?
I think I saw something that went from, so the 400 was the all-in cost of
Correct.
everything. I think this thing that I was looking at was like $40 to fixture that jumped up to 55 or something. So it was like a $15 per fixture adder or something like that to be putting these controls on. I don't remember the exact figure, so don't quote me on it. But it was, it took your 2.5-year return on investment and turned it into a 3.5-year return on investment, which is still feels like a no-brainer.
Exactly.
And it also,
If it can dim the light, maybe there is no additional cost.
As well as, I don't even look at that, if it just, however, if it could just say to us, this is how much you actually use.
Your ROI can possibly stay the same if,
right.
Yes.
like Dave was saying,
Right.
We can dim the lights after 10 o'clock at night, go down to 50% power, from 90 or 80%.
Right.
Drop down to 50 and you skate through till dawn.
Right.
We're all good. At that point, the ROI might stay the same.
Right.
To be a dimmable ballast, a dimmable driver, and the electronics to, do all that monitoring seem like they'd be rather expensive, but they could have come a long way. And, if everybody's using these things these days, it's just another, it's cheap to install.
Yeah, my understanding is that the fixtures today are already engineered for them to be added.
Right.
They're all basically a plug-in.
Right.
Okay. Very
Like,
good.
because the dimming would be done by just changing the current, the voltage is the same, and you just adjust the current. on it, where in the old fixture and incandescent, you have to actually adjust the voltage on it. So it's easier. It's a LED's a constant current, constant voltage.
Okay.
That's,
So when are you getting show and tell from one of these, maybe from one of these installers?
So what, that's the idea. That would be part of the contract would be. So you're not gonna, I don't think any installer is gonna be coming to just install a light in the hopes of getting a contract. The thought would be is that part of the contract would be to install 3 lights.
If you dare sting me or I'm gonna really blast you, but I'm gonna get you. Got a.
I'm impressed.
I don't show fear.
Grasshopper.
I don't show fear to
Yeah,
Dave Peters, so they don't sting me.
We've
but-
got a couple of them, 3 of them.
Yeah, they're flying around.
Yeah, there's some over there
Oh,
too.
wow.
They must, in the walls maybe.
Who brought their bees with them?
Yes.
Right. Was there-
Well, they probably had a class here at some time and they lost it.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay,
Beekeeping 101.
yes, yes. Okay, are there other things you guys can think of as wanting to add to this RFP over versus a standard? You know, just saying, okay, we're looking to change the lights. We know, we've talked about adding, doing, the idea of setting up some test. We've now talked about the idea of having it as a 3-year maintenance as a separate line item. On there, we can have it as the electronic controls, wireless controls being part of a separate line item as well.
Yeah, and I honestly, and if you guys don't agree, that's fine. Again, I'm still pushing for a real-time monitoring of power use, metering of use.
That's why I want the wireless controls. That's the
I think
easy
Well,
one.
those are actually
The
2 separate
wireless,
items.
they're 2 separate items, so, yeah.
Wait, so explain that because that was not what I was getting.
So the wireless controls allows you to do things like set up a dimming schedule, have them be responsive to, I was reading something about, if you have sensors on there that you can actually have motion sensing lights.
Yes,
So the first light triggers and the rest of the lights down the street come on as vehicles go as another saving, right? So the wireless controls lets you kind of set up how your fixtures behave.
Okay.
The metering that Dave's talking about is we actually know what our actual power usage is as opposed to being some hypothetical calculated thing based on whatever we're doing.
So
So,
wouldn't these smart controls do that though?
They might, and
right, we
I
just want to make
honestly
sure that
don't know.
that's covered.
I agree.
Right, I mean, because if these things are doing all that to the light, I would imagine that they're gonna know what the input is,
Yep.
what the driver's putting out. So it might be able to do the whole thing all in one, but I think knowing what we're spending on the streetlights every year is a great thing.
as well as the idea there is if you saw a significant change in a light, all of a sudden it was using more power or something, you would know that it's time to change that. So you can almost become proactive in changing lights versus reactive of once it goes.
Mhm.
So that could be a thing. Like if we're rolling a truck and we have 4 lights, but we see 2 more that are, it might makes more sense to just change them than it would to,
If they're showing a pattern that the others,
that they could be full, right? I guess it gives us a chance. The whole idea that we've learned over this period of doing this is that the end, it's a matter of who's taking responsibility for the reporting of things. So right now, the way it works is that you as a citizen have to either call the police, town hall, or the DPW to report a light is out. And they got to now do a reaction to Unitil. If you call Unitil, it's deaf ears. Okay, so it's going to be, but then again, as each one said, it's a matter of, do we not, by having the monitoring, we can kind of get rid of that. Where you don't have,
who monitors it?
it could be,
We set it up with DPW, public safety, wherever the right entity is to.
yes,
It has a server to receive the
Yeah.
information.
They can just wake up.
Receive the Data.
yeah, you wake up, it could be an email push
Yeah.
saying this light is out, right? Or, once a month, we're getting a report showing whatever our electricity usage is and
Every
stuff like that.
citizen in town.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Turn them on, turn them off.
Yeah.
Personal
Two
responsibility.
neighbors fighting.
Yeah.
By the way, just in a side conversation with the present DPW director, Unitil has already contacted him and said, hey, we hear that the purchase of the streetlights is imminent. We need to know what to do if we get a phone call from Joe Citizen that a streetlight is up. I told the DPW director, I said, you'll need to work that out between yourself and the town manager.
Exactly. In fact, though, Unitil's gonna continue to do the same thing they did. We can tell them they can continue to do the same thing they
Right.
did, which is nothing.
Nothing, yes.
Yeah. Okay, that was part of that. That was the other side of that. We had that. So did you guys have a chance to look at any of those, the contracts that people had done? Okay, there, I give that one, the MAPC did have those contracts on there that we could copy a lot from. That's the only promise I had for Heather, was that we would look at other things we want to do. One of the things we thought was, do we want more lights? And that was something more of a a public safety folks saying, I think we need a light at this intersection or something to
If
that.
there's leftover money in the budget, you mean?
Correct.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I question whether it's allowed under the grant.
We wouldn't be able to do it under the grant.
No.
No, but
Okay.
it's a matter of when we have somebody being
That's
able to.
right. You have an
Right.
entity engaged, you're never gonna do it for cheaper than when they're already here doing
Right.
everything else.
Correct.
So,
Correct. So even if it was a separate line item and that had to be taken up as a capital planning or something to that effect.
There's budgetary money. that's
Right.
always available too.
that to me feels like the biggest challenge of pursuing a turnkey type situation, which I'm in favor of, is that each contractor that's gonna bid us may have a different proposal. It's gonna be more work on our part to align apples to apples, because however we're gonna write up some sort of proposal, we know we want replace in kind what's there. But
Right.
we'd also be maybe looking for their recommendations for other areas that are lacking illumination or changes to the existing illumination. We'd be asking for a wireless control set and their recommendation for how that might work, right? So each contractor that looks at it might come to us with different scenarios unless we lay out very specifically the scenarios we want, and that's where a design would help. Right? But I don't know that it's needed. It just means that it's more on us and whoever's reviewing the bids that come in to make sure that this guy that's a lot cheaper, we understand what we're getting relative to what the others are proposing.
So they'll have to, I mean, hopefully we can structure the RFP so they have to be very explicit in every category of like what it is we're looking for.
Yeah.
And then can compare, but at the end of the day, generally these things are come down to price.
Right.
Like, so you're right, like if we don't set the expectation that you're gonna do at least X,
Right.
we could get a low price, but it's because X is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
These on your lap or?
I
on the
think
floor?
I think we're like having issues.
You're getting frustrated.
I think since I
Yeah.
closed the door, it's warm up in here. They're probably dying from the heat up at the fan. The lighting in this place heats this room up there rather quickly if it's quiet outside.
Yeah,
If only
these-
they would
the-
let us change. the-
Exactly, because they yeah.
We need some LEDs up there.
Yeah. well,
And that, the
that's-
problem is these fixtures, the bulbs in there, you can't replace them to LEDs. So we wanted to do the whole fixture on them. And they're like, no, these were designer fixtures that we did. Believe me,
So we think, it looks like a fluorescent bulb.
it's not. It's some special plug, how like some bulbs is that like that one of type of bulbs.
Maybe some of them will
Is there a
find their way out.
screen?
No,
No
Oh.
screen, yeah.
maybe we can choose some in that direction.
Okay. All right. That was the other thought. So I'll try to look back on that site and try to find, and maybe because there were some on that site, there were some that were just for the electronic controls. And the idea would be, is I agree that, but we'd have to spell out, we're looking for electronic controls and they will do both dimming and monitoring of power. That type of idea. They'd be able to control and monitor the power on the lights.
Mhm.
That's the feeling there. I think we can spell it out in the RFP, exactly what kind of things we're looking for, type of thing.
Maybe go for an initial proposal and then fine tune it after we've gotten 2 or 3 of them.
Well, that's the problem. You can't really do that. You have to go out. Yeah, yeah.
Unless you rebid the whole thing.
You have to
again.
keep rebidding, and that's actually what we're doing, because that first one, actually, the first time we did it, we got one proposal. The other one came in, I
One
think,
valid one.
the other one came in too late, time-wise, but it came in the right day, but it was too late. And it turns out their number was a lot nicer than the number that, but they had to be disallowed. Significantly different,
And
yeah,
I mean, that's the challenge of public bidding stuff.
right.
Planning process.
Exactly. Okay, what was it? I'm trying to find, oh, that's the spec sheet, okay. Yeah, so to give you an idea, when I was looking at this, and granted, I'm going back to 2020, 2020. The pole, the pole with a bracket, a 4-foot pole with bracket was $44 a piece. So it's not like a significant difference. Right. When I'm looking at that, it's, as you say, Dave, and by the way, some of the manufacturers comes the whole thing, the pole and everything. And I agree that we're gonna come into wiring.
Yeah.
That's gonna be,
I've never spoken to anybody down in Littleton, but when they did theirs, they did everything. 'Cause
I think
every
so.
single one of their metal poles, or whatever you want to call them, is identical. I used to drive down to Westford every day, and through Whittleton Common and that whole area. Every single one of them was changed out completely.
So is that something we want to do as an alternate or just do as the request?
I
replace
honestly
fully.
feel it should be the request. And have some contractor talk us out of it.
But for the
Probably
purpose of
for the-
bidding it, right?
Yeah, so
You
if
say-
it comes in over, if we don't do it as an alternate, if it comes in just over, then we'd have to rebid the whole thing. We'd have to revise the RFP and rebid again.
In which case
If it
we
was,
then
if
say-
it was,
And that's why, so
if we did it as an alternate, then
we can evaluate both
Right.
scenarios. And if the new arms and everything is over, right, then
Can we do it in reverse?
what do you mean?
Spec a complete with an alternate of just the head?
We
Yes.
can, yeah, we could
so.
do that way. And so I know when we've done RFPs, and I'm not thinking about, so I'm thinking about Fitchburg. When we've done RFPs for demo and we've had alternates, we've had to take the alternates in order of the number. So we can't like skip around. So I don't know if that is something specific to that type of activity, or if that's just sort of the way RFPs are in general, because I've never done
no.
multiple alternates on another kind of RFP other than them. So that's something to keep in mind, like we wanna, if that is, and I'm sure Heather will know.
I would say
the
we
answer
can't
to
do
that.
that.
But we could probably, like, we just have to know kind of our order of priority of alternates.
Right.
So that the thing that whatever we is our least most desired is last.
Gotcha. I mean, that's helpful to the bidding contractors because they know where to.
Yeah.
Put the money.
Right. I don't know if bidding contractors know that that is an order of alternates. And it may be something specific to
Right.
real property as opposed, well, this is real property. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah.
I'd be happy if we didn't have to do an order of alternates.
it just makes it much more complicated.
Yeah, you just have to, because if we said alternate 1 is the monitoring, alternate 2 is the wireless controls, alternate 3 is just the bulb without the arm, or just the head without the arm. Then we can't take 3 and not take 1. We can take 1 and 2 and not take 3. We can take 1 and not take 2 and 3, but we can't go out of order with alternates. Potentially, I may be making an issue where there isn't one. I hope that there's, I just know that's the way it works with them.
Okay. All right. Yeah,
Procurement
it's fun.
is something,
Okay. The lawyers have set it up. huh?
yeah, pretty much, yeah,
Okay.
state law.
All right. So, as I mentioned, is there anything else that we're thinking that we can do? So I think I'm looking at it is that there are some examples for RFPs that I can send out to everybody, that other town, you know, that this is what was done before. This was done by the, like I say, MAPC, MA, did I get that right? MAPC, right? And so, and I can actually send out the proposals too. So I'll refresh everybody with a set of documents showing the original RFP, you know, the bid and then the winning bid for each proposal, type of thing. Just to give us a feel for that. We would look to add to that, and at that point, you know, add our own wording for certain events. As we mentioned, you know, so far we have the electronic controls. I think we'd want to, I agree that I'm looking at it as I would want to replace the whole arm and everything. I just don't want to be in this mode with this town where we replace something and it's going to end up being more just because the wire, you know, I look at labor being.
Yeah.
You know, then if somebody has to throw wires into a tube,
Right.
that's going to be more labor than it is to.
Yeah, the other thing, Dave, is that the first 3 years maintenance is potentially much higher as those wires fail after you've already done
Now
the.
you've got to
Mhm.
get the new head off.
Now you have to pull the head, right, exactly, pull the head out, pull those wires out that you left there because you didn't change the tube. And
Right.
so on, you know, so you're starting with brand new wiring from the pole out,
Yeah, and
from the
something
wooden pole out.
else to think about too is if we give them 2 different scenarios for whether we replace just the bulb or the arm, they also will have to give us 2 different maintenance costs, or they should, because like you just
Yeah,
said,
right,
when
maintenance cost is gonna be higher if they're not replacing the
and
entire.
if we
thing.
don't ask them to be specific like that, then we are just gonna get the higher of the 2.
Okay. All right.
That makes my brain hurt.
So what would you guys like to do for the next step?
So it sounds, so if you're gonna refresh with some of the proposals and
Right.
quotes that came in. It seems like a good next step is for each of us to review and mark up and come back with how we tailor it to our specific needs that we're after, right?
Okay,
And then do we meet again to review and consolidate before going to
well, we definitely
Heather
have,
or others, or would you involve Heather and
Well, that,
John at some point?
I was wondering if Heather should be involved in that process. Yeah.
she should.
She's
Then-
gotta
then-
do it.
Yeah, she's gotta do it, and if she has a strong preference for one format versus another, I think she'll have the reasons why.
Hmm.
Okay, okay. So.
Yeah.
All right, so just help me clarify.
Mhm.
If we're asking for different, so let's just say that the idea is that it's the whole fixture, arm and all, right? We determine that makes sense. Now, the only option is whether it's electronics or no electronics. Right? You know, because
Mhm.
that's the only options we're looking on this.
I,
So
I
we
think
can-
that's the way to do it. I honestly don't want to get really complicated with too many alternates. I'd rather have a maximum of 2 alternates, go with the full fixture. And then the electronics, and what was,
So there was the controls and then the monitor.
So,
Are we saying we want to have, we were considering them to be both, like being able to dim it versus being able to see the usage?
well,
The
see
two
that,
elements of
the,
that.
the issue there right at the moment is we don't know if those are one and the same nowadays. Is that unit already
we can,
capable of that?
what the thought was is to specify that it should be capable of that. Because to me, the dimming doesn't make any sense
Right.
if I'm not gonna be able to monetize it into a savings that I can say to Unitil, look, we're not using what you said. This is what we're gonna pay for.
Okay,
Type of
so,
thing.
so then based on that,
We have no way of metering this power. Okay,
That's,
I'm just
yeah,
catching on to
Yeah.
that. That's exactly
So-
right.
Right.
so that's
Okay.
why,
I kind of knew that, but I didn't know if it was where the power might be coming from exactly, but it's right off the lines for Unitil. And
Exactly,
it's an estimate.
exactly. Well, it's based on the water.
I mean, I assume there's a generally accepted practice amongst utility entities about how you calculate usage based on the fixtures that exist in the community. Right?
Yes, it was an
But
average.
that's not real use,
Use fixture.
but it's not real usage. It's based on the fixtures you have. This is what you owe us for electricity. This is
Correct.
unmetered.
Yeah.
But that would be consistent whether it's to some degree, Unitil's fees might be different, but the calculation is probably mandated by the public utilities, I would think,
Yeah.
right? So they probably have an alternate calculation when it's LED fixtures, right?
Yes, I think you're
Or it's how you can
probably.
say these are the potential savings that you're gonna recognize.
Or
But
it's,
if we can somehow monitor
Through
and
meter
give
usage.
them that information, like we're basically metering for them.
Right.
self-metering,
Not give it to them.
but
Is that a
that may, that may determine which, which type of meter or monitor or fixture we use. If there's something that they accept versus, we don't use that. We don't communicate with those types, we communicate with this one
That
or,
would be
whatever
direct
it
to
is.
Unitil, I wouldn't think. I'm not sure, because, Unitil,
Or a format that they allow.
right, because Unitil monitors all of their electric meters and they process all net metering and so on for solar arrays. So, yeah, okay, I understand what you're saying. These units may need to communicate directly with Unitil, which is gonna have a cost to it.
Oh, geez.
No, you would not.
Yeah.
They do not. They are, it's basically 90% of the time, it's a wireless network that talks to something. So it's gonna be a cellular or it's gonna be a,
Okay, but
Yeah.
there's gotta be an entity that's gonna process that data and.
right, which could be done through the town. It could be through the DPW, or it could be monitoring through,
Careful when you say that, because, there's still the issue, the DPW can't handle anything more than what they're already handling.
understand. However, it could also be whoever's doing our maintenance
Yeah.
as well, right? That could be,
That's fine, I'm just.
Yeah.
being the devil's advocate.
No, as long as we find, see an avenue through to, whatever we're looking for our goals.
I think if I can, I'm gonna probably. Oops, now you're mad. I think I'm gonna put my
Not one of them
energy
is
towards
found
trying to
full.
find one or two towns that actually did do metering
yes,
and see if they can give us some feedback. Because then they would have a comparison as to what they ended up metering versus, I'm sure they knew upfront what the calculated amount is gonna be.
And was there
So
any
like
coordination?
there are towns that actually put meters
I'm
on.
ass-
on
No,
each-
the electronic meter.
Oh, the electronic system.
Yes,
But
I'm assuming somebody out there is doing.
But it'd be interesting to know that what, like, was raised, what coordination they had with the utility, right? And-
That also.
And
too.
yes,
Yep.
yes, we'll accept that, or
Right.
no, or we had to do this in order for them to accept it,
Mhm.
right? That kind of stuff.
Actually, just my big old Cobra head. I mean, it had a 275 watt street lamp, LED. It was just kicking around my basement and never got to turn it into anything, so I threw it away.
I've got a solar one up in Jefferson, New Hampshire. It's been up on the wall of that building up there now for 2 full years. It's still operating fine
So
through the winters and everything.
as we procure the old fixtures here, is there any value to them? And would we make that part of the RFP that the entity that's coming to replace them, they own the scrap, they own the old fixtures, and it's part of, take that into consideration in the bid, right? Because sometimes contractors will carry the scrap value, right? Or are we expecting to take ownership of the removed fixtures to resell scrap ourselves?
Well, we have ownership of them once once.
We own them from
purchase and sales
Unitil,
is-
but are we, as part of the bid to this new entity, are we saying, as you're gonna replace these, you now own them as part of the replacement, or we still own them, take them down, and what are we telling them to do with them? Give them to
Yeah,
us?
and I very much doubt that that's allowed through procurement laws. I think those will have to be auctioned through municipal.
so,
Well, I think it depends on, so if you think about,
general construction with
Right.
municipalities. So generally, when you have something being replaced, you know, it's being replaced because there's not a lot of value left, and it's just like, okay, the contractor has to dispose of it.
Right, we
However they dispose of it,
bid stuff, demo
Yeah.
and properly dispose, right?
Yeah.
And so
Okay,
our
yeah.
demo and proper
Yeah.
disposal could be that we slice it up and scrap it. It could be that we resell it to somebody else. But
I don't think
we,
we'd
as
get the
part of the
benefit.
demo, I'm speaking from the GC
Yeah.
standpoint, we've taken ownership of it by bidding the job. Our responsibility is to take it off the owner's hands because we're demoing it, we're scrapping it, we're doing.
All right,
So
so.
I just think we need to be
That
clear.
makes
Yeah.
total
So
sense.
right here in one of the MAPC bids, luminaire retrofit disposal, bidders shall supply labor and material to move all existing, blah, blah, blah. Bidder responsible for moving existing high sodium and or low pressure sodium or mercury, blah, 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 gathering them at a central location provided by the city. Contractor should provide sufficient containers. Contractor shall have staff on hand and sufficient equipment. Blah, blah, blah. Bidder is responsible for and must obtain recycling certificate for light bulbs that match the quantity of luminaires. Bidder is responsible for and must obtain proof of disposal. Bidder will remove all of the debris from job site. All scrap value remains with the bidder and is intended to be used to cover the recycling costs.
Reuse that.
If we thought there was value and we wanted to resell the arms, because I know that came up in
Yeah.
the last meeting, then we just need to be very explicit
Yep.
that they're gonna keep the arms, but I could see that, we're gonna keep the arms, but I could see that being a double-edged sword, because we might end up with some that are just, now we have to dispose of them.
We end up with a pile of arms we never do anything with. We
And
get
then
no
a few
takers,
that
now
we-
we have to deal with
Yeah.
scrapping, disposal, whatever down the road. It's certainly easiest for the town if we,
And that can get expensive real fast.
and if there's legitimate scrap value to the items, it can help with the bid because
Yes.
they take that into
They'll take-
consideration when they're putting their numbers together, because they're competitively bidding this. That's advantage if you know that you can get
Yeah.
$10,000 of scrap value, you
Right.
apply that to the bid potentially.
Mhm.
And somebody who doesn't.
Hopefully scrap is doing well.
Yeah.
Um,
All that copper.
It was a year and a half ago. I don't know what it's doing now.
I think everything's.
I know a year and a
It's in
half
my
ago,
bank account.
companies were taking
Mhm.
their boneyards with trees growing up through equipment and
Yes.
stuff and loading them on trailers and trucking them out to the other side of Worcester. There's a big scrap yard out there. And getting big money for stuff.
Oh, we need to, yeah, maybe I got a few things to go there. Okay. All right, so I think we've made some real good progress, guys.
Mhm.
I think we got a good grasp of things. Let me use, I'm gonna make it an easy one here, but how quickly do you think if I can get this stuff out for you by before the weekend, how quickly would you like to do another meeting?
How
My
quickly could
schedule's
we
pretty easy.
review?
Right, that's what I'm saying, be able to review.
In all honesty, my review is gonna happen a day or two before we meet, in all
Understand.
likelihood, right? So
Right.
giving us 2 weeks to the next meeting, 3 weeks to the next meeting, it's not, there's no duration that's gonna impact my ability to review it, because I'm likely gonna do it the day or two before we meet, so.
Yeah.
Okay,
Just
I
you
know.
have 3 weeks there. I think you're up against Labor Day weekend. I think it's 3 weeks. I don't know. I
It's
haven't had
the-
a calendar
yeah, it's
in
whatever.
front of me for so long.
So we're, yeah.
I know next week is not a good week for me to do another evening meeting.
no, I would be the first week, the week of the 28th is the only week I can do, anyhow.
And
That might be
that
okay.
leads into Labor Day weekend, so that's the
Yeah.
last week before Labor Day.
Correct.
Right,
I'm okay in the earlier part of that week. We are doing something, so we'd be going the Friday.
Right,
Thursday,
I just
Friday.
couldn't do the Tuesday,
okay,
I
okay.
think. I mean, I couldn't do the Tuesday. I don't think.
You guys pick a date and I'll make it work. I just tell work.
I'm just trying to see if I have any of the others. Okay, so Monday's not good for me. Just got the building reuse one on Monday, even though,
So
Okay.
Tuesday's not good for me.
How's
What about Wednesday? I got nothing.
What's that date?
that's the 31st, the 31st.
Oh,
I don't remember anything so far for that.
How was Wednesdays usually with you?
Coming up with the right stuff.
Okay,
On the calendar, I did it somewhere. I'll
Yeah,
tell you, since I got off a few committees, I've totally missed a couple of meetings because I used to work my life around my meeting schedule. Now
Yes.
it's my meeting schedule around my life.
Yes, yes, yes,
Oh,
which is much better. Yes, exactly.
I was amazed that I was able to make that transition.
31st. Okay, so let's set for then August 31st.
Same time.
Is this a nice time for folks to set?
It works.
It's good.
Okay, okay. I think it gives it time to get home and say hello
Have dinner.
and all that stuff. Oh, I forgot that part. That's okay.
Or
Yeah.
not.
That would be lunch, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Location TBD, once you have a chance to look at that.
I'm looking at the same place.
Okay.
Okay.
Unless-
Yeah, I can't-
It's not so-
Yeah, unless somebody's already taken this room.
I like the shares.
Exactly, that's where we figured. And it's,
Hopefully
The
there'll be less
bees,
bees.
the bees could be,
Well, they're here, still here 3 weeks ago. It's like a brand new set of bees. you
Yes,
know, for
yes.
3 weeks from now.
Yep. So that worked out well. I appreciate the time on this thing. So I'll do some entertaining.
Motion to adjourn?
Second,
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, get that with the insert part. All right, we're gonna call the meeting then at whatever it is, 8:18. I'm gonna then shut off the recording.